Welcome! So glad you joined us as we are preparing to read for 2018 PGCPS Read Across America Day. My name is Dr. Christille Fawcett, and I am the Instructional Director for Cluster 8, located in Area 2.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Robertson, an instructional specialist with the Technology Training Team.
And we are a dynamic duo on today. And today we are going to read Miss Mary Reporting. This is an outstanding book where you can learn something from the life of Mary Garber. Now, in 1940, Mary Garber had a lot of challenges that she was experiencing as she was trying to get a job of her dreams. And in 1940, things were a little difficult for women and for children and for people of color. So let's get right into the book so that we can begin to hear more about Mary Garber. Miss Mary Reporting. Now, as we get ready to get started, I want you to think and maybe elbow partner someone to ask them a little bit about how you feel when people make you feel different. Just elbow partner, to your elbow partner, say, this is how I feel when people make me feel different. Okay, well, let's see how Miss Mary is feeling. Mary Garber was a tiny bit of a girl, but that didn't stop her from playing football with the boys. Tackle football. Over rough and rocky ground, she called her team the Buena Vista Devils, or the BVDs. And of course, she was the quarterback. It seemed that Mary was born loving sports. Her younger sister, Neely, thought their father helped to feed Mary's interest. Not having a son, he'd take us to football games and other things, she said. As they watched, he taught his daughter the rules. He felt if you were a spectator, you ought to know who you were spectating. Now look at that picture. You have the players on the field, and then you have these individuals right here, like Mary and her dad. Those are the spectators. Spectators. Another word, the audience. When she wasn't playing or watching sports, Mary was reading all she could about them. She followed boxing and baseball and loved the football team from the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. Now, my favorite college team, Maryland Terps. But Mary's mother wasn't as patient with her sports-loving daughter as her husband was. Neely said Mrs. Garber believed that a girl ought to behave like a girl. Not that Mary's behavior surprised her mom. She was used to her middle daughter's independent streak. When Mary was 8 years old, her family moved from New Jersey to North Carolina. How many of you had to move from one state to another? How did that make you feel? Mrs. Garber insisted that her 3 girls write letters to their grandparents back in the Garden State. Now remember, Dr. Fawcett said that this was back in the 1940s, so they didn't get to text or call individuals, they had to write. Mary's older sister, Helen, did as she was told. So did Neely. But Mary thought letters were boring. So she created a newsletter. In the Garber News, Mary reported all the news and drama from her neighborhood just outside of Winston-Salem. School was closed for the summer. How many of you like it when school is closed for the summer? I do. Neely stepped on a track. The BVDs won another game. The family poodle was run over by a car, but escaped injury by crouching in a rut in the bumpy road. Writing the Garber News came naturally to Mary. Early on, she set her sights on a career as a newspaper reporter, but opportunities were scarce. Look at that word, scarce. Opportunities were scarce when she graduated from college. Scarce means that they didn't have a lot of opportunities for her once she graduated from college. She finally took a job as a society reporter for the Twin Cities Centennial, a paper in Winston-Salem. Society reporters wrote about parties and other social events. They had to describe the glamorous clothing people wore. That was not at all Mary's cup of tea. At one dance, Mary was embarrassed. I got the wrong dress on the wrong lady. After that, she brought along a friend who worked at a clothing store to help. Mary got her big break when the United States entered World War II. Many of the nation's young men joined the Army forces, leaving women to take over their jobs on the home front. After the Centennial's last sports reporter joined the Navy in 1944, the editor put Mary in charge. She kept the sports pages filled until the war was over. It wasn't easy, especially at the beginning. I wonder why it wasn't easy for her. We read that she loved sports, but I'm wondering why it wasn't easy for her. But remember, we talked about she had some challenges because Mary was a woman, and oftentimes women were not allowed to participate in those types of careers. But let's find out. When Mary went to cover her first college football game, she found that there were no programs identifying the players. How could she describe the action if she didn't know who was making the plays? I was just desperate. She later remembered, I didn't know what I was going to do. Fortunately, a spectator, we talked about that word a little earlier, a spectator is someone that's in the audience, saw her helpless expression and volunteered to sit with her and tell her who was who. I couldn't have done it without him if it hadn't been for him, she said. He really saved my skin. Now, did he really save her skin, or did he help save her job? World War II came to an end, and Mary's boss moved her to the news desk. But a year later, she went back to sports for good, just in time to witness an important milestone in baseball. Do you know what the word milestone means? We all have milestones in our lives. A milestone is just an important event in your life. Like the day you were born, that's an important date in your milestone. In 1947, the Brooklyn Dodgers added infielder Jackie Robinson to their roster. Have you heard that name, Jackie Robinson, before? Well, back then, African American athletes like Jackie played baseball in the segregated Negro leagues. Segregated. That means that they were separated because of the color of their skin. When he joined the Dodgers, Jackie became the first black player in the major leagues since the 1880s. Wow. Look at Jackie Robinson in that picture, and he has on that uniform. He's ready to play. In August 1947, Mary traveled to Brooklyn, New York to watch the first place Dodgers play 3 games against the Boston Braves. She was particularly impressed by Jackie's skill and bunting, tapping the ball lightly for a base hit. Last Wednesday, he laid down a perfect bunt along the third baseline, she told her readers. And when Boston pitcher Johnny Sain threw wild to first, Robinson legged it all the way around to third. Woo, this is getting exciting. Jackie became a role model for Mary. Who is your role model? Do you have a role model? I know I do. My grandmother is my role model. She was a phenomenal woman. She was inspired by his quiet dignity in the face of taunts and jeers from people who couldn't accept a black man in the major league. I wonder how he felt. Has anyone teased you? How does that make you feel? Can you begin to connect with how Mary was feeling as well as Jackie Robinson? There's no getting around the fact that Robinson met these challenging days with maturity and courage. She would write in 1956, "It takes guts to keep your mouth shut and walk away." Woo, woo. That talks about some maturity and skill there. Because just think about the time that someone has called you a name or teased you. Are you able to keep your mouth shut and walk away? Jackie Robinson did. I know that had to be hard. It's against every normal reaction of human behavior, but Robinson did it. Woo. Mary had to endure her own share of slights and struggles. The trouble started in the press box, the area of a stadium or arena where reporters watch sports events. In the 1940s, women were banned from the press box at college football games. Banned. That means they were not allowed to come in there at all. No admittance. Mary was forced to sit with the coaches' wives until her editor complained. Even that, after she was allowed in, Mary had to wear the football writer's official press badge, which proclaimed, "Press box, women and children are not permitted." Look at that. She had to wear that, and it clearly states, "Women and children not admitted." Imagine how she felt. Locker rooms posed another problem. Well, have you ever watched a game and the reporters go right into the locker rooms to talk to all the football players and basketball players? They're in there. Mary couldn't get in there. Why do you think that posed, that's the word, a problem? Because she was a woman. She was a woman. After a game, male reporters headed into the team's locker room to interview players while they were changing into their street clothes. But Mary had to wait outside. By the time the players came out to talk to her, the male reporters had rushed back to write their stories. The players also wanted to go home, making it hard for Mary to get good quotes. A few skipped out on her altogether. Sometimes being a female sports reporter brought unusual requests. For example, a high school basketball coach once asked Mary to sew up a tear in a young man's uniform. Look at that. Although she was far from a whiz with a needle and thread, Mary agreed to give it a try. "I nearly died during that game," she said, "because every time that kid went up for a rebound, I thought, oh gosh, those pants are going to rip, his pants are going to fall down, and I'm going to be really embarrassed." But I'm proud to say they held. Mary did her job with steady determination. Soon readers looked forward to her bylines. Coaches started to know her and respect her, and young athletes were eager to talk to her. When Mary started working for the Centennial, many schools in the South were segregated. Remember, we talked about that earlier. The whites had to go to the white schools, and the blacks had to go to the black schools. White children went to all white schools, and black children went to all black schools. The newspaper rarely covered games at Winston-Salem's all-black schools. But Mary changed that. It seemed to me that black parents were as interested in what their kids were doing as white parents were, she said. Before long, black athletes were watching for her, hoping she would show up to write about their games. Mary showed up for more than 50 years. She wrote about baseball, football, basketball, tennis, track and field, just about every other competitive contest, including marbles. She officially retired in 1986. That's a milestone. At age 70. But after she kept coming to work every day and writing at least 3 articles a week. By the time Mary gave up this daily grind in 2002, people realized what an extraordinary career she had. She won awards and was voted into the Sports Writers Hall of Fame. Woo, she's had a career. These honors were part of Mary's legacy as a sports writer, but so were her encounters with people she'd written about years before. Time after time, these adults showed Mary folded yellow newspaper clips with her byline they'd been carrying in their wallets for decades. Mary understood why her reporting had a lasting impact. I tried, whenever I wrote about kids, to be as positive as I could, she said. If you can give a kid a pat on the back, or if you can tell him he's done well, or you can make him believe in himself, you can make a difference in his life. Teachers, how often do you pat your scholars on the back and celebrate the excellence in their classrooms? Mary also made a difference in the lives of women who followed in her footsteps. Ashley McGeechee Fox, who covers the National Football League for ESPN.com, was an 8-year-old tennis player in Winston-Salem when Mary wrote an article about her. Years later, Mary was her role model as Ashley pursued her own career as a sports writer. Ashley said, I remember thinking, if this petite lady in granny glasses can stand up to an angry coach, why can't I? According to Mary, the greatest compliment she ever got came from a young boy. It happened in the 1950s when Mary was covering the Soapbox Derby. Do you even know what that is? Let's look at the pictures. Look at the Soapbox Derby. A friend of hers who was sitting in the stands overheard a conversation between two African American boys about 8 and 10 years old. The older boy pointed to Mary and asked, "Do you see that lady down there on the field?" The second boy nodded. That's Mary Garber. And she doesn't care who you are or where you are from or what you are. If you do something, she's going to write about you. The end. This was a great story. Many of us have different struggles and obstacles that we're faced with, but the interesting thing is, we too are our own independent writers and reporters. We determine our own story and our own destiny. So be a fabulous author as you write your stories. Thank you for joining us on today. I think we did an outstanding job. Teamwork does make the dream work.